Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you had a nice last night, and a lot of discussions were going on last night, so I think you made also new friends here, which is good. This is why we organize these conferences. Today is the second day of the conference, and we have two keynote speakers this morning. And I would like to introduce here Ladislav Miko, who will be our first speaker. He is a soil biologist, I may say. He held high positions at the DG for Health and Food Safety, and also at DG Environment at the European Commission. So he has two professional lives. One is a biologist life, and the other one is policymaker life. He also was the Minister of Environment of the Czech Republic. He teaches at the Antwerp University and Charles University in Prague. And he was head of the Czech and European delegations at the COP15 of the Convention on Biological Diversity in Montreal in 2022. And recently, he is an advisor to the President of the Czech Republic. And I would like to welcome Ladislav Miko here to tell us his words for this conference. Thank you.
Thank you and good morning. All what you heard about my profession and work doesn't qualify me too much to the issue of the transport. Nevertheless, let me to address you with some comments which are more general and hopefully posing some questions to which this conference will seek some answers. But I will start first with my personal reflection. First, when I heard Tomáš saying that he hopes we had a great night last night. Yes, I did. I was preparing my presentation until 2 after midnight, so enjoying the theme. And second, this morning I woke up quite early, before 6, in order to reach this place by 9. I'm saying that because it is somehow connected to transport. My home is just on the other end of Prague, and the overall distance is 30 kilometers, and these 30 kilometers I made in fantastic time, 1 hour and 40 minutes, but that included running several times to catch the bus or metro. Probably this indicates or somehow shows that the living beings may have some problems with transport and transport infrastructure, which, as I understood, is actually the theme of the conference. I'm going to speak about the more general issue of European biodiversity, and I found a nice allegory speaking about the crossroads, because first of all, biodiversity has to somehow find the way how to live with the human impacts in building infrastructure for transport and transport itself. And maybe sometimes stopped at large crossroads like the one you see on the slide. At the same time, I believe in terms of policy, the discussion about the biodiversity conservation, biodiversity protection is on political crossroads. We have been doing quite a long time many things to protect and support biodiversity. The tradition in European Union, and you will know that very well, is very long. Actually, it's more than 5 decades since we have common European legislation, which was built, of course, over the time. But it is something what is not just like yesterday or recent. We are in 1970s. And Europe came with something what until now I believe is in a way unique concept. You may know and you may worked in establishment, denomination, management of Natura 2000 sites in Europe. This system has been invented and developed already before 2000. It is still in development, and it is unique in many aspects. First of all, unlike in many other places of the world, if I'm not speaking about the, let's say, the global initiatives, it is not invented to address the particular priorities of individual state, but the whole European territory. There is not many concepts which are legally binding and go over the borders of nations. Natura 2000 is such a concept. It is based on scientific data, scientific information, scientific advice, defines many new terms which over the years are very broadly used. I'm quite sure that you will be speaking at this conference on using at least the term good conservation status or species of European importance or habitat of European importance. And what is very important is that the contributions of individual nations to building of this network are not just left to the states themselves, but it is assessed by international scientific panel, which is giving the feedback about the sufficiency and accuracy of the proposed system. Now, many of you will know the situation from your countries and may maybe mention tens of cases which in our or your view should have been included and are not because of political influence, etc. But I can assure you that still the way how this system is built is probably the more science-based than any other in the planet. Another interesting thing is that, as I was, which was not mentioned, when I started my work in European Commission, I was director for biodiversity for several years in DG Environment. And that was my job. And what is significant is all my career since then up to now is a kind of decorated by one after another biodiversity strategies. We started 2002 in Gothenburg, then we had the 2010 target, then we had 2020 target, then we had 2030 target. And this is obviously okay, it's good. But what is interesting is that we still have a problem. After 30 years of strategies to stop decline, we are still basically at the same line or very close to the same line as we were in 2002 and maybe in 1970. What is now new is Green Deal. I don't know how it is in your countries. In our country, this is a very fierce discussion. Many people being against, being afraid, being criticizing that just because of the bloody green ideas, everything is more expensive and we cannot use our cars and whatever. This is showing one important thing, that unfortunately, one of previous Czech presidents mentioned in his time that ecology is just a cherry on the cake. And if we have money and everything goes well, we can do it. While when we have a problem, we have to care about the cake first. So we have to care about the economy. We all, or maybe not all, but many of environmentalists hated this statement, me included, and criticized this statement, me included. Nevertheless, today we see that society behaves about this way. And I think there is time to reflect that also in the strategies which should address the problems with biodiversity. Still, what we can say, the European Union has probably the most complex, developed, science-informed, and very powerful legislative framework compared in the global comparison. Probably you know many international agreements, including CBD in the first row. There is no enforcement opportunity or possibility for international agreements and pledges, except of the pressure of the people, of the public, of the scientists, or of the other states. You cannot fine United States of America for not contributing to this or that goal of biodiversity strategy within CBD. On top of it, I am not going to speak about the membership. But in European Union, we have a legal framework which can be enforced. This is very important. Now, what I already slightly mentioned, the main goal in all strategies was always the same. I remember this sentence, halting the loss of biodiversity by, and then you can change the end year. It's logical, it's necessary, but it's very difficult to achieve. What we know today, I have not that much time to discuss all the history, but the most funny was the first strategy from 2002 to 2010, because I was involved in 2006, I was developing very detailed concrete targets. It was more than 100, which needs to be started or done to achieve 2010 goal to halt the loss of biodiversity. And then it came year 2010, and the politicians put a very simple question. Okay, so did we halt the biodiversity loss? And we were like looking on each side and saying, we don't know. Because we didn't have sufficient data about the year 2002, so we couldn't compare in 2010 if we are better or worse than in 2002. We had, of course, the long-term trends, etc., scientific works. But in terms of policy, that was a big mistake of the whole strategy. So then we said, okay, we need a baseline. We did a baseline in 2010. Against that baseline, we are trying now and in subsequent steps to compare if we are moving forward or not. And there are mixed messages, I would say. The one is we have more developed, more interconnected system of protected areas, Natura 2000, I mentioned already. This is growing. It's growing on land. It's growing in the sea. Great achievement. We have better situation in some particular groups or species. Some birds are doing better. Big carnivores, the wolves are in Netherlands. When I started in 2005 in Commission, that was seen as a fairy tale, that one day, naturally, wolves will arrive to Netherlands. I was laughing and saying, okay, in Netherlands, I'm from Slovakia, born. You don't know what is a wolf, and you will not know for a long time. Okay, we are there. We have beavers, much more present in the landscape in the Europe, etc. There are some successes. But when we look on the indicators of the overall biodiversity, the result is more or less sad. We are not doing well. Loss of biodiversity is not halted. There are some positive trends, okay, but if you look on all the assessments, be it on the species, habitat level, or ecosystem services, you often see the tables, as you see in the corner of this slide, where there is a lot of red, another lot of yellow, and one or two or three green fields. Somewhere, you know, you have to really to look for to find them. And if you look to arrows which are showing the trends, they are very often still going down, or at least just like showing that there is no change in the trend. So we have a problem. We can discuss, and you will discuss, why we still have this problem. So much of effort, so much of money spent, and we still have a problem. When we look on the drivers, these are well known. It is interesting to study. I have to find a student to analyze how the concept of drivers is evolving. They are more or less the same, but if you look on the scientific publications and impact of individual drivers, this is quite changing over the time. And what is now on the first place is habitat change and land use change, not climate change, not invasive alien species, but loss of habitats and problem for biodiversity to find a place where it can exist, basically. To the large extent, it is about the way how we manage the majority of our land. And this is something that I'm going to speak about, because the idea that this can be addressed by more comprehensive nature conservation and nature protected areas has some limits. But now, coming to transport, if you look on the drivers, which is habitat change, climate change, direct exploitation, invasive species, pollution, and nutrient enrichment, originally I just wanted to say, okay, so you know, transport is actually relevant in the first one, so let's discuss that. And then I was thinking like, okay, wait, climate change? Of course, transport, big contribution. Direct exploitation, I thought, okay, this is one where transport is not relevant. Sorry, you have to build the roads to exploit the forest. You have to build the roads and infrastructure to make your modern intensive farming, or to mine, or to whatever. So even there, transport is relevant. Invasive species, I am not going to ask how many of you are studying spreading of invasive species along the transport infrastructure. Obviously, it is very important. We sometimes build not highways only for cars, but also for the species, which are coming and doing what they normally cannot do that easy. And of course, the pollution on the one side, and nutrient enrichment. Everyone knows that basically even in mid of Amazonia, you have already fertilizing rains because of nitrogen oxides, which are from the transport. Okay, sorry. I was thinking that the important task today will be mentioned to particular linkages between the transport and climate change when speaking about the biodiversity. And just what I wanted to mention is that there is very often an idea when we are speaking about also transport problems and transport infrastructure, that we have to prepare the space for the species which are basically on their way, I say it in simplified way, from the south to the north, because there is, let's say, the higher average temperature. So the species from Mediterranean are coming to Central Europe, and our species are coming to Poland, and Polish species to Finland, etc. And we have to make it sure that they find a way. But it's very important to realize that actually this is not what is going to happen. It's not a simple shift from the south to north or from the east to west or whatever way. It is a very complex thing. First, it depends on the species. Some species don't care that much about the transport infrastructure, particularly those which can fly. But if they don't find a suitable habitat on the end of their flight, I mean, they are in trouble. So not only barrier itself, but also what is behind the barrier is important in this consideration. The other species, okay, they really have to go somehow over the barriers we create, including transport infrastructure. And they have a longer way to reach probably a new place to live, but they need to have what is called the stepping stones, you know, certainly the concept. So also something what needs to be along, close to infrastructure for transport to allow biodiversity to survive the combined stress from transport and climate change. Obviously, I already spoke about the invasive species. They go with us, with our transport infrastructure. But what is important and sometimes forgotten is that in every place which has a history in the biodiversity development, particularly in Europe, you have relic species which have been there when the climate was different, then their presence shrunk and they stayed in very little population, sometimes invisible populations. I see that here I can use my soil biology. In many soil species, you see the species which have been invisible, not found in samples, in researches in our country, and suddenly now they are appearing. And these are not the species coming from the south. These are species which survived in very low populations, in small patches of nature, in our countryside, but as the conditions change, they are finding more suitable habitats and they start to expand, and they are creating the new fauna, which is not migratory, which is actually local. This is often forgotten element. Summing up, this just demonstrates that the equation is not a simple one. It's a very complex issue, and many different aspects need to be considered. So when we speak about the transport, I was thinking already, I see here my colleague who will be speaking after me. In Czech Republic, we addressed some transport barriers, problems already in 2002. We have a methodology, we had very nice, maps of fragmentation of Czech Republic, etc., etc. And we are in 2024, and we can basically just like take it as it was, and we can implement it as it is written. Not many changes. We will be certainly speaking that it's much better now. But basically, this is not a problem which was not addressed in the past at all. We had plenty of initiatives, money spent, etc. We have planning and impact assessment framework. We have rules in Natura 2000. I hope you all know, I mean, when we started with Natura 2000, this was a hit maker, the Article 6. I don't know how much it is used still now, but Article 6 urges you to select the option from investment which has least impact. And if there is an impact, you have to compensate it somewhere else in the nature for the species under protection. I don't know how much this is implemented, but it's a very powerful tool. We have been building barriers to avoid negative impact of existing barriers, okay? You have a highway, that's a barrier. If the species are getting on the highway, they get killed. So you build another barrier to not allow the species to get on the barrier in order to be not killed. Then we have been building something what is more natural, and this is on the pictures, and this was also in the logo of this conference. Obviously, the eco ducts, eco corridors, bio corridors, whatever you will call it, something what is really helpful, but it's not cheap. And when we had to explain in Czech Republic, and I would ask, we can make an enquete, how it was in your countries, if we had to explain the society why the highway to the North Moravia, for which everyone was waiting because it was already too late, will be suddenly 350 million more expensive because we want to have something like that, because it's necessary, and nobody was hearing about the regular biodiversity. Like when I was in Netherlands, the people were funny and very happy. They have seen that the lizards and hares and foxes use it. I mean, if you will use that argument in Czech Republic, good luck. So we had to use, moose, bear, which comes to that place like once in 7-8 years, okay? Difficult, really, to get it, but we managed, so that's good. And then the other answer which we developed was to have stricter protection of nature. But now the question is, and this is one of the central points of my presentation, do we really need to increase the area covered by strictly or less strictly protected areas? In 2010, we wanted significant increase of protected areas. 2020, it was 20%. 2030 now is at 30%. This is also the global goal. My question is, what is going to be the target in 2050? 50%? 2070? 70%? I believe that if everything is protected, it's exactly the same as if nothing is protected. So just quantitative increase of protected areas is not a solution, particularly not in Europe. So this is the strategic crossroad on which we stand with biodiversity protection in Europe, also in relation to transport. How to address that thing that we cannot have more strictly protected areas, or hardly, and it is somehow, I was considering, similar to the way how the society works. Have you seen the societies today? They are split. You have the people clearly supporting one thing and the other people clearly opposing that thing. Nothing in between. No shadow zone. It's just like, yes or no. We are building something similar, or we have been, I will say some good news, building something similar in the nature. Here, this is nature, strictly protected. Here, do whatever you want, okay? Very strict, very visible contrast in the landscape in many places, in the way how we treat the biodiversity. If you look on the agricultural landscape, biodiversity is hardly the main issue which is considered, and this is half of the territory in most of the countries. If we look surprisingly also to forests, how many of them are, okay, we work for it, we have many successes, but how many of forests are dominantly driven by the biodiversity considerations? And how many are production forests which look first and foremost on the economic impact? So we need new approaches, and I'm coming close to end of my thoughts. We develop new approaches since 2020. First time in the strategy from the European Commission, the word restoration appeared as a goal, not as an option. We are looking much more on ecosystem services and functioning of ecosystems, and I like to say even more broadly, the functioning of the landscape as such. And instead of building of something what I would call the contrasting patchwork, where you have a very good pieces of nature and very bad pieces of nature, we are trying to get, let's say, more scaled approach, which allows the functions across the territory, not only in selected patches during, in the country. And this is reflected in the new strategies. The new biodiversity strategy 2020 was first. We have it in Green Deal in the biodiversity strategy. We have a new law very recently, nature restoration law. It was a big fight, and I don't know to what extent we really understand how dramatically different that law is compared to anything else we had before. Because this is something what is putting, let's say, focus on the function, and it's not only looking on where we still have some rests, but it's looking on where we need a function to be restored, which is totally different concept, and this gives a big chance that we can address also problems which we are addressing here. So, summary. First of all, and I basically commented that by my odyssey this morning. Maybe we have to discuss, as a society, not just scientists dealing with biodiversity and transport, what I called here, I don't know if the term is right, quantitative approach to mobility. Just like to have more and more and more cars, more highways, more railways, more whatever, more even water, passes, etc. Probably we can get from one place to another also by other means. And this is very complex discussion, I'm not going into detail. But I think just going more and more and more is the same nonsense as having more and more protected areas. That's, in my view, very clear. Second, we need to change approach when we evaluate impacts and when we try to mitigate the impacts. We need basically not only making, let's say, a kind of lines in the nature on the map, but we need to look on solutions which include targeted proactive restoration elements and restoration of lost functionalities which are missing on the way in the matrix of the landscape in order to secure the working of the landscape as a whole, including the structures which have been introduced and built by people. That obviously includes restoration of ecosystem functions in landscape, including restored nature. So something what was there, we still remember, like alleys of trees or small forests or small grasslands. I mean, probably you will know that the most endangered habitat in Europe is not a forest, but mostly grasslands, if not speaking about the wetlands. And then a very important thing, probably another important element for this conference, and this is joining the planning for transport infrastructure and for the landscape development and management. So not having two different bodies working separately, and then when they made the transport people make their map, we make our map, and then we meet, and then we are trying to convince each other who is the bigger loser. And then you have a compromise, and that compromise is better or worse, but it's not good. So I think that planning efforts and assessing the impacts of the planned infrastructure should be done together in one team, in one work, back to back. Are we able to get it? I don't know, but I think we have to demand it in order to be successful. Then, final slide. Functional approach may be expensive, I already mentioned, and difficult. So we have also to think about where to get money for it, and if we can get some of the effects without that very expensive bill. And that requires to use as much as possible what is called, in very simple or simplistic way, working with nature. So in every moment, I have to ask myself, okay, yes, there is a technological solution to that problem, but is there also other solution which will use the natural powers to address the same problem? And if so, that should be the first what I will choose, even if it will be probably more costly at that moment, or if this will not give that great economic opportunity to some building companies, okay? But that should be important. We need active defragmentation. We need space for natural processes to happen, which will help also functionality and connectivity of landscape. We need to create new or restored habitats. But for that, and this is something what I want to mention, particularly our agency is famous for it, without knowing what you have and how it evolves and what are the trends, you cannot make any success. So robust monitoring and knowledge about the situation is absolute key, which cannot be forgotten and must be secured. And I will end by, on the opposite side, I am not against protected areas, to be very clear. We need to protect everything what needs to be protected very strictly, but we need to start to work much more, which I would call ordinary nature, which will help us to address problems along the highways, along the railways, along the rivers with navigation, etc. So that's my message. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Laco. Thank you very much for pointing all the crossroads we are standing at. But also, I'm really glad that you provide us with some further steps that needs to be done in order to avoid the different crises we are facing. And I'm sure that there are a lot of questions and comments in the audience. So now is your turn. And we have two microphones, so if you have a question or comments to what...
My experience is that after first presentation there are no comments and no questions, but...
Well, after the last evening presentations there were a lot of questions and people didn't want to go to dinner, but we have questions today as well.
A fantastic presentation, thank you. So the question is, we in IENE focus mostly on transportation infrastructure, and you very beautifully explain how we should look bigger: functional habitat, cumulative impacts, connectivity, functional connectivity for nature. I think here we are a lot of people that do a very good job, sometimes in the local area, sometimes at the national scale, but we are kind of working on our own field of expertise. How do you think actually our voice is heard enough at the policy level in Europe and worldwide? And do you have advice on how we can lift our voice to be heard?
I think that this voice is heard nationally and worldwide quite strongly, and the but is that the voice is heard and understood within what I would call, let's say, our bubble or our friends. And if you are lucky, you have friends also among the politicians or among the construction lobbies or whatever. If you are not, then it is more difficult. But there is a way, in my view, how to make it better or how to increase this chance. And this was mentioned, and this is to start to address the problems when they are actually developed. That means, sorry, I'm already in Czech. That means that already in the planning process, you should be part of the planning. I have personal experience from several decades. And if you manage to be part of the, let's say, regional landscape planning teams or even the developers planning from the beginning, they are open to make solutions. The problem is the ownership of the plan. If the plan is already developed and then you come and say, this is bad, this should be changed, we want that to be there, etc., they start to defend. They start to defend because they think they did a good job. The ownership is very strong. If you are part of the team and you are building the picture from the beginning, there is 80%, maybe more, of the ideas which are directly incorporated without any problem. That's one. And second, this is my very, let's say, popular and bon mot, I would say. Everything is possible when we really want. And what means really want, and this is what I'm trying to say to all people, we need to get public on our side. Because when public demands something, then the politicians, but also the companies, hear it. They don't want to go against the majority of the public. Do we work sufficiently with public opinion regarding the transport infrastructure versus nature? And you can answer this question probably during this conference. I think not sufficiently. We are speaking more to the expert bodies, more to the expert audiences, which is okay, but the message is not getting through to with ordinary nature to ordinary people, I would say.
Thank you. There is a question over there.
Thank you very much for your nice, great presentation. I like the approach. There are a lot of question marks that are created. But I was thinking about politicians, but you just mentioned also the public opinion, which is very, very important. And I was wondering about the language that we use. Mm-hmm. And I like the idea of extraordinary nature, but do we use in the correct way the terms of green infrastructure and biodiversity? We are coming from a political world. Are these two terms that we ecologists use every day? We are waking up and sleeping with this in our minds. But are these two terms understandable from the political people and the public, as you mentioned just now?
Good question and not easy answer. On the one side, this is getting more and more ground within the public. The people are getting used to that. My experience again, and I have some studies about that, is that if you have the difficult terms and concepts, it takes 20 plus years until it is understood and accepted, and then you still need to implement it into legislation and active steps. Nevertheless, I think we cannot avoid to use it because this is international terms which are understandable across the planet, etc. But you heard my presentation. I mean, if you wanted to make it presentation for scientific audience, I could have used all the terms. It could have been looking much more complicated and difficult, but I am using the words like ordinary nature, functions, our landscape, which needs to deliver things which are easily understandable, and all the polls, public polls we have in Central Europe, in Czech Republic, in Slovakia, in some other countries, show that people are supportive to have a nice, functioning, delivering landscape to live. This is what they understand. If you start to speak about the species diversity of collembolans, it's very difficult for them to capture what actually, they maybe say, okay, probably you are right, but sorry, I don't know what is your what, collembolan? So I think that we need to use both languages. One in, let's say, when we are in the problem-solving groups, which are addressing the issues, but when addressing the public, we should be willing and able to generalize using the understandable words and sometimes even getting a little bit step back from the 100% of what we want to achieve, because then it starts to be too complicated to explain.
Thank you. Unfortunately, the time is really running, and we could discuss this even further, and I think we can during the coffee break. László will be here during the coffee break, so you can reach him and talk to him individually. I would like to thank him. Thank you for coming today.